There have been some serious things going on in the SMITE scene this very morning. I am not oblivious to them, and I will probably have something to say on it somewhere later on. But for now, we're still gonna do the mid-season patch notes review, even though my mind is in a few different places right now. But yeah, I wanted to go through this again anyways, just to make sure I have that covered as well. So everything else you can already see on the live patch notes, all the skins and everything. We're not going to go through that again. We're purely looking at the balancing things here, and you know, a lot of cool skins, but not the point right now. So we got the new passes and everything coming out, the new chests for all these. You can just pause here if you want to see what is what. Again, not the focus. This is all the stuff in the Avatar Battle Pass, like various jump stamps and the effects and the cabbages, and it's all in there. It's super cool, super cool. And then we have some Project Olympus updates. We have mastery skins for Kronos, Kumbhakanda, Dianos, and Agni. So all of them are finally updated. Ares gets a visual update, which looks fantastic from what we've seen so far. Classic Ares will stay available. There are some changes to reports. I think this is a glitch at the moment that there are like notifications for just a single report, which is not meant to be. So that's being sorted out. And they're also adding a new system to better detect malicious reporting of other players who have committed no infraction. This should not discourage players from reporting. Nothing will happen if upon review we choose not to take action on a few of your reports. But repeated abuse of the system, however, mass reporting streamers falsely, habitually reporting opponents in duel, etc. is a bannable offense. There's almost no reason to ever report anyone in duel. I literally can't think of one unless you're like intentionally delaying the game and farming the enemy in fountain maybe. That could maybe be match griefing, but just don't report in duel. It's just gonna, you know, it's just gonna backfire on you. And the Vision Shard gets a reminder to purchase a second relic to appear when you enter the fountain instead of when you leave it, which is great because that happens to me all the time. I walk out and then it's like, oh, right, that thing. Some general minor fixes, nothing really too important here from what I can see, just hovering over it. Some fixes for Cthulhu especially as well, because he was not like working super smoothly in some regards yet, the Maya especially. And items fixed Staff of Merlin not reducing damage on the second fire from Baba Yaga Brew. The second fire out of 3, okay, yeah, makes sense. And then Ranked gets a reset as well, and the leaderboards and frames are also reset along with that. It's a soft reset as well. Joust gets a change to the fire minions. The max health scaling is decreased for the fire brutes and the archers. That was because they were too tanky, and the protection scaling was removed as well. Much better because duel is not about fighting minions. Conquest, massive rework of everything. They announced already that there will be a complete Conquest rework in Season 8, which is fantastic. Also kind of expected, but also fantastic. And yeah, this time they're more about changing the jungle, and they're doing massive changes to how the jungle monsters work. So every jungle monster will have a unique ability, and they will also have changed stats. And these abilities have a significant impact, and actually learning and remembering all of them is going to take us quite a while, I think. So the jungle shrine gets changed as well. Now you only have to hit it once. You never have to hit 3 times, which means like attack speed doesn't make a difference in how quickly you clear it. And the gold bounty is increased from 5 to 10 per stack. So if it's fully stacked, that is, I think, 7 stacks or 8 stacks. I think it's 7 stacks. Well, 70 80 gold. I think it's 70. Lane minions are also getting some changes. Their AI is improved. So they kind of target each other better now. So they would target the closest minion rather than the first target they see. And they don't shuffle around as much, just generally making them feel better overall. And keeping them more on the same level and not pushing back and forth as much without any players interacting with them. In mid lane, the camps of the small harpies on the closed off side is now one single elder harpy, meaning this is significantly harder to clear, especially for mages, which usually rely on AoE abilities to clear those 2 minions very quickly. You can't do that with a single elder harpy, and obviously the reward is also slightly lowered. The Gold Fury has her hitbox reduced by 25%, which is very interesting. And the AI is improved for smoother passing towards players. I'm not sure what exactly that interacts with, like, because she can already move obstacles, but I would say it sounds like a good change overall still. And the Then we have, the jungle monsters. Some of them are now aggressive. So here's a list: the Manticores, Chimeras, Harpies, Gold Fury, and Fire Giant will be aggressive, and others are defensive. So that's the Oracles, Pyromancer, Centaurs, and Satyrs. Though the Pyromancer was aggressive when they showed it in the thing, not sure. So if you walk too close to any of the aggressive ones, they will come to you and they will attack you, while the defensive ones don't really care about you. And the Fire, oh no, we'll probably get to that anyways. The Fire Giant spawns like a single lava pool now if you walk by. So the Alpha Harpy is the one near Duo Lane, the single one. That reduces applies a 15% attack speed reduction to the target, which can stack 2 times, so 30%, and last 6 seconds. If you have 2 players, then it will only get applied to whoever is tanking it, so that's why it's easy-ish still to clear with your support. And you can see that all the stats here are changed, so we can go through, I think we go through that with one of the buff holders, because those are the most important ones. But they all have shifted stats when it comes to their health protections and everything else, and XP and gold as well. So generally, I think the idea is they're going to be beefier. The Elder Harpy and the Harpy will now be aggressive, but they don't get any special abilities, and they also get that stats overhauled, such as we see here. Oh, never mind, the Manticore was not shown here, that's weird. So the red buff gets a flurry effect, which means once it goes below 45% health, it will attack quicker and with more damage. And the attack is much, much quicker. It might actually be nerfed at some point because it's crazy, I think. This is super painful to solo for anyone who doesn't have Assassin's Blessing now, I think. Because the attack is really, really fast. Unless you have like something that wipes him completely once he's below 45% health, that should be a lot of damage. You have to be quick and you have to time it right with the abilities. The Chimera, the purple buff, has Void Sludge, which is really interesting. So, fires a projectile attack at its targets, applying a debuff to the first target it aggroes. Decreases protections by 20%. And that lasts for 20 seconds? I think it was 10 in the game, but either way. And with this debuff applied, enemy minions will prioritize you less, even if you deal damage to an enemy guard. So... what can I say? This is, I think, obviously it's a debuff on one side, especially if you get engaged on. So having Hawk to kill this quickly could be very helpful. But on the other hand, you could, as a jungler, you could go to the enemy purple if it's up, let that hit you once, and then gank the duo lane, and you could attack in the wave and have a better chance of not getting killed by the minions. Have your support take over the minion aggro and just burst them. Obviously, you have reduced protections while doing so. There's a risk to that. But it's definitely something that can be used for interesting plays, I think, because you don't really get the minion aggro, which is usually a lot of damage in a gank if you're ganking while there's a wave up. Speed buff gets a cleave attack. That's just a wind up like the Demon King, and it deals 3 times the basic attack, but you can juke that relatively easily. You just go left and right, and that's it. Okay, here, buff holder balance. That is what I'm looking to. So, buff holder, the big minions that are basically the most important one for junglers. So XP here, for example, is increased by 10. Gold reward is also gold reward is also increased by 10. And the health, on the other hand, the max health is increased by, what we got, 50, 65. So, yeah. At the same time, the magic protection is reduced from 6 to 2, and the physical protection is reduced from 18 to 15. And the scaling, the increased max health for the scaling is going up by 35, and the protection is going up, or the scaling for the protection is going up from 1 to 2, and for the physical protection is going up from 2 to 4. So we see a shift. They're still tankier in early game already, and then they get more tanky as the game goes on, but they also give you more XP. And then if you look at the small ones, the buff guards, they actually get a more significant XP increase, because they also get like 10, 11, no, they get 11 increase on the XP, not much on the gold, but they're much easier to clear. So even with the increased health, this means like per camp you get like 32 XP more roughly, which definitely adds up over time, and it's going to make for very different jungle playstyles with very different characters being more effective, I think. I think that's very, very interesting, and I like that jungle is a little bit harder to clear solo for non-junglers or characters without Assassin's Blessing that way as well. So, very good overall. The blue buff can spawn up to 4 satyrs, but he's on his own now. He stands there on his own, and then he spawns these 4, which are very easy to clear. So you can basically just clear them with any AoE ability. But they don't give XP or gold either. So they just have 10 max health, and then they get some extra health later. They get like 40 extra health later, but they're really, really easy to clear most of the time. So very interesting shift there as well. I think solos should be able to solo that still, especially if they have any cleave or AoE, which they all do because they're solo link clearing characters. So otherwise you're not playing them in solo. Pyromancer gets a new ability called Infernal Ritual. This is a channeled one that takes 3 seconds to be cast, and if you interrupt him in that time, it doesn't happen. So you can see him with various CCs like Stun, Silence, Knockouts, Mesmerize, and Fear. This is an AoE debuff that causes all nearby guards to take 15% increased damage from all sources, so you do want to interrupt that, which means sacrificing a CC for a potential team fight around the Pyromancer that might happen right after. So this is a fair bit of a risk, but you definitely want to avoid this because it has a 10-second duration. It's a bit like, World of Warcraft combat, like MMO combat, where you have to interrupt things at specific times for the fight to go well. And the Oracles get a similar thing, the Guarding Ritual. This is also a channel for 3 seconds that can interrupt it in the same way. And this one causes the Oracles to take 40% reduced damage from all sources for 5 seconds. Pretty significant as well because they're already very tanky, so you might want to interrupt them. This is harder though because you have to interrupt 2 at the same time. Fire Giant now spawns a Molten Pool. Again, this is a 30-second cooldown though, so it can't just happen all the time every time you walk by. But yeah, if you just casually stroll by there, he will do that. Gold Fury, you got the new ability for each Gold Fury. She channels the spell as well, so it seems like you can interrupt that as well. And this applies a stacking debuff every 0.5 seconds. So, and this lasts for 5 seconds, so this seems to be stacking relatively quickly. The first one is the Gold Fury one, which is Burden of Riches, and this one applies a 5% movement speed slow per stack and gives a 20% extra gold bounty when killed per stack. So you take you give more gold when you die, it seems. So you don't want to get too much of that on you and then have the enemy team collapse on you. The Oni Fury gets Burden of War, which is 5% increased damage taken from all sources per stack. Again, it's 6 stacks, so 30% overall. It's pretty nasty. And the Burden of Dread is on the Primal Fury, which is dealing 5% reduced damage per stack. So this is going to be very interesting. I think these Furies are going to be harder to take it in many situations, especially if you're trying to solo clear them or anything like that. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. And that's just the first part. That's just the jungle part. And now we have a massive second part, which is the physical penetration shift, which means like a massive amount of pen items is overhauled. I can tell you right at the start here that the mace tree is not going to get overhauled, so that's with the exception of Titan's Bane, so the flat pen items mostly remain the same. So, Titan's Bane, increased cost from 2,300 to 2,550. Increased physical power from 30 to 40. Added 20% physical protection. Penetration, not protection. That would be also very interesting, but... and then at the same time, you get a new passive. Your first ability cast gains plus 20% physical penetration. This can occur only once every 10 seconds. 10 seconds is actually something you can have multiple times in a fight anyways. I think this is stronger than Obsidian Shard because a lot of assassins use a big ability to engage. Not all of them, but like you can do that with Thor, you can do that with Rat sometimes, you can do it with... I mean, even with Thanatos, even if you hit them with your 1, that's going to be massive damage just from this one ability. Yeah, there's just a lot of big abilities that you can engage with. Pele as well, which make Titan's Bane very useful, whereas a lot of mages often use some sort of setup with not that much damage beforehand. So for them, it's often less beneficial in comparison with Obsidian Shard. So the price increase and the stat change overall, I think, is very appropriate. I think this is still going to be core, especially on many assassins. With hunters, it depends more on the exact hunter, and they have other choices now as well. Executioner gets a massive nerf. The cost is decreased by 150 gold. The power is increased from 30 to 35. So that sounds good, but the passive shred is decreased from 12% per stack to 7% per stack. That means it takes you 3 shots to get to 21% damage reduction, whereas Titan's Bane has 20% for yourself off the bat. Executioner is still nice because it applies for your entire team, so it has benefits, but then it also doesn't stack that well with penetration. So yeah, I don't see Executioner being picked up that much, considering there are some other options that are just extremely interesting and strong right now, in my opinion. But we'll have to see. I just think like having more flat pen outright is better for most, especially since this flat pen works on structures again as well now, so split pushing and everything is back on the menu. I think we might actually move towards a more PvE focused or structure focused meta, because we get a lot of pen back and the objectives on the map get harder. Like Fire Giant and Gold Fury can do a little bit more. Fire Giant spawning that one pool and Gold Fury having all these extra effects. So yeah, pushing a tower seems like the easier way. And the next one is Atalanta's Bow, which is also extremely interesting. It gets 20% extra pen, but the 10% movement speed gets removed in return. And now, but it still gets movement speed through the passive. So if you receive a kill or assist on an enemy guard, you gain Atalanta's agility for 10 seconds. This effect increases your attack speed by 20% and decreases the movement speed penalty for attacking, battling, and strafing by 50%. So it's like half Fatalis. Kind of resembles Wind Demon a little bit, I guess, in a way. And I could see this being like the core pen item for crit builds potentially. I'm not entirely sure, but it's just an easy 20% pen. It's an easy way to chase enemies, or maybe even in any build, because Atalanta's Bow just says good stats overall. No price change either, anything like that. So overall, this should give you a lot of chasing potential still. You might want to have some other movement speed along with it somewhere. That's what I'm thinking, Wind Demon. So. And then Rage gets a 100 gold price increase, which just was a little bit too good. Understandable. Silverbranch Bow added 10% percentage penetration, but took away 10% flat penetration. Also increased the physical power gain from the passive to from 1.5 per stack to 2 per stack. So the stat value is definitely going up here. I'm not entirely sure if this will find a niche. Maybe because of the pen. Maybe because of the percentage pen it will, like in late game slots for Apollo Artemis. The problem is that as a late game option, especially crit is so attractive that Silverbranch seems to be a little bit, second to that often. And then we have 8-pointed Shuriken. That's just getting a attack speed reduction from 10% to 7%, nothing major. That's just because the tree as a whole is getting changes. The first one is a new item, Shadow Steel Shuriken, 2,500 gold, 20 physical power, 10% attack speed, 20% crit chance. New passive, enemies hit by your critical strikes have 40% reduced healing and regeneration for 8 seconds. I'm skeptical about this one because I think Toxic Blade and Brawler's Beatstick are such stat-efficient items, and I'm not sure if this one can compete. Yes, it has a lot of crit chance, but the other stats are very low and the price is not that much lower than most of the crit items in comparison. So you really want to have that anti-heal. So in a situation where you just really need anti-heal and your team can't afford anywhere else, I can see it, but usually I would think there are better options. It doesn't mention if this stacks with other anti-heal items, which would be something to justify it because it only procs when you crit, and you want to have other crit items beforehand. But I would imagine it's the same effect as Brawlers and Toxic Blade, so I would be surprised if it stacks. But if it does, then it's definitely a lot better, because then you could kind of stack them all on a hunter if you wanted to and have 100%, 120% anti-heal. No, but that's not how it normally works, I think. So yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to make an exception for this one or something. Poison Star, which I think used to be an anti-heal crit item once upon a time, if I recall correctly. Decreased attack speed from 15% to 10%, but increased the physical power from 30 to 35. So it's a little less focused on that attack speed, which was, I think, put on later anyways, and a little bit more focused on just doing higher base damage. Nothing major here. I think it's going to lose a little bit of DPS in some situations, but give a little bit more clear. Wind Demon decreased its critical strike chance from 20% to 15%, decreased physical power from 30 to 25, but the passive now provides 10% penetration in addition to the attack speed and movement speed. I'm not sure if this is worth it. You're losing 5% attack speed and 5 power, and you're only getting the penetration once you already crit, whereas if you look at yeah, well, the other items up here, like Atalanta's bow, you just get 20% outright. So I don't know why it wouldn't even get this extra condition. So you're really reliant on that first crit to make anything happen. And when that happens, then it's really good. But before that, it's kind of eh. But I guess maybe it's just to combine it with Atalanta's that way. Soul Eater gets massive changes, which are, in my opinion, massive buffs. Cost decreased from 2,300 to 2,100. The power decreased by 100 by 10. Not really that big of a difference, but noticeable. But it's just the base power, right? And the mana is removed, but no one really cared about the mana on Soul Eater. It doesn't even synergize with the item at all. Instead, you now have 10% physical penetration, which in my opinion does a lot more for you. And you also have 5% extra lifesteal before the sex, ability lifesteal specifically. And then you keep those extra 5% once the item evolves, so 5% more at any point. So I think Soul Eater is definitely a go for like some extra nice pen on the side and some sustain. I'm not sure where it's going to end up, if it's more an assassin item at this point or a hunter item or both. But I definitely think it's interesting. And then, well, Evolved Seed gets the old icon. I haven't seen that one in a while. So the power increase here is also lowered. So the power is decreased from 60 to 40. We didn't actually see that on the patch notes before. And then you have the lifesteal increase instead. I didn't know there was an extra 10 power here, but I think it could still be interesting. It's so cheap, 2,100, and it's easy to stack as well. So I think there's still value in that. Heartseeker gets the cost reduced from 3,100 to 2,900 and loses its 10 flat penetration, but gets 10% physical penetration instead, which in my opinion actually makes it stronger because this is a late game item most of the time, and late game often you get more out of this percentage value, or at least around the same anyways. So yeah, I don't really know why Heartseeker needed a buff, but yeah, I think it's still going to be good enough against squishies, especially if there's like an aura around them or something, like at level 20 at least. And then Failnot adds 10% physical penetration. It's just not bought enough, I guess, not valued enough, and now it gets an extra stat, and I think it's really interesting now. I think if this item was available to everyone, ooh. Masamune gets removed, but we get another item that gets better stats actually in most ways, so we'll see. Not this one, but the other one that we'll get to. There's two new items. This one is Serrated Edge. This one is 2,400 gold, 40 physical power, 10% lifesteal, another lifesteal item, 10% movement speed, and 20% physical penetration. Passive, if all three of your non-ultimate abilities are on cooldown, gain 40 basic attack power and 10% lifesteal. Basic attack power specifically. This is not a hunter item, this is in the katana tree, but I do think this is definitely interesting for some. Some characters more than others, because like, especially if you have to use your only mobility, that is a risk for some characters, but some characters can pull it off relatively well. It's always a question if they synergize with the rest of the stats, because like the power here isn't the highest, the pen is nice, you got the lifesteal and you got the movement speed, so like between this and Soul Eater, the new one, I think you have to make a choice basically, because they're kind of around a similar realm. And I think it depends a lot on the character, but I don't think it's bad. I just have to find out where it fits, really. And then we have Glad Shield. Glad Shield is removed from the game. It's a completely new item, so it just keeps the name, basically. But it does build off Tower Shield now. Excuse me. It is 2,500 gold now, so tier 3. 25 physical power, relatively low. 200 health, that's decent-ish. 40 physical protection, also decent, but also not super high. And 10% cooldown reduction. Passive, any enemy guard who is under 50% health takes bonus damage for your abilities equal to 15 plus 2 per level bonus physical damage. Triggers only once per enemy per ability. This is super confusing to read, to be honest. So, it's extra damage on every ability you use on them when they're below 50% health. And then as it's per level, like at level 20, we are looking at 2 per level, so 40 plus 15. So overall 55 extra damage per ability, which sounds like quite a lot. It's probably physical, bonus physical damage, so it's reduced still. I don't know, if you look at it like next to Mystical Mail, I feel like it sounds weaker on paper at least. Depends a lot on how many abilities you can use. I guess like someone like King Arthur can maybe still use it though. Yeah, but the defensive stats are not the highest, so I'm not quite sure how I feel about this. This could be interesting under specific conditions, but I'm not entirely sure how well it will do. The main point here is that Glad Shield is out of solo and Berserker Shield is also out of solo, so no more sustain from items in solo outside of Warrior's Blessing, which also got a lot of changes anyways. So, Berserker Shield also tier 3, 2500 gold, 40 physical power, 30 physical protection, 20% attack speed, and 10% physical penetration. A relatively damage focused item here with 30 physical protection on the side, but you know, power and attack speed and pen, so it's more not really a warrior item anymore, I think, for the most part. Passive, if you drop below 40% HP, you become Berserk. Berserk provides 20 physical power and 20% attack speed. Last 5 seconds, refreshes if healed up and then redamaged. So somebody who can self-heal above 40% health and then, you know, just bounce back up and down can kind of work with this. So if you say like Jungle Erlang or Jungle Varman and you just use your ult to heal up, that could work. Someone like Pele could work, who, you know, likes dropping on low health. Someone like Sun Wukong could work. So there are a few that could like kind of fit this, but then, you know, you wanna benefit from these stats as well. You want to benefit from power and attack speed. So Sun Wukong will kind of be out of the picture already. So there's a few interesting ones. I think especially like Varman is one that you could look towards. Then we also have another item. This is the Masamune replacement, the Sledge. 2,300 gold, 40 physical power, 300 health, 150 mana, 20% crowd control reduction, and for each enemy within 55 units you gain 10 magical and physical protections up to 3 times, so 3 enemies. This means it fully stacks in Joust, which is nice. This means it has a lot more tankiness. It used to have 150 health, now it has 300. It still has a decent amount of power. It's not the tankiest item in the game, but with 40 power it doesn't have to be. CCR I think is still a decent stat. The mana, yeah, okay, I guess. Overall, I think a very interesting item that I could imagine being used because you still get 10 prots if you're just fighting one enemy. So, well, it says each enemy, but I'm assuming this is each enemy god. Otherwise, it would be very strong. But yeah, I'm assuming this is working against gods specifically. And yeah, I think I like this new version. I think it's a more tanky, interesting version. And you don't have the movement speed anymore. Assassin's Blessing gets its buff. It's been a long time since I've, I don't even. Praise be. Increased health from 50 to 100. Now provides 7 physical and magical power. So this is just extra buffs. Increased healing from jungle monsters from 7 to 8%, but keep in mind they're getting more tanky, so, you know, it's a shift. Decreased bonus damage done to jungle monsters from 40 to 30%, so even for junglers it'll take longer to clear. But the healing, I think, yeah, the healing, if I recall correctly... no, I'm not going to say anything there unless I look it up first. But yeah, I think overall buffs still. And having these stats in early game means you can actually use that to gank. You can actually use that to trade. You don't run into situations where solos just run you over with Warrior's Blessing just because they have it and your Assassin's Blessing doesn't have any stats. It actually has some stats now. Very nice. Warlock Staff, increased base power from 65 to 85, decreased base power per stack from 1 to 0.8, so the total power is increased from 140 to 145. Main point here is you have more power at the start, more rewarding to get it early on. Apparently it was very strong pre-season 7, like when Hi-Rez tested it internally, and they're shifting it more towards that point again to see if it can find its place. And likewise, Book of Thoth has the price decreased from 2,650 to 2,500 gold, meaning, you know, Baba Yaga says hello. Overall, this might make Book of Thoth more attractive again as well, because it hasn't been for a long time, with all these pen items dominating the meta. Tyrannical Platinum also gets more interesting. Increased magical power from 70 to 85, increased minion health from 10 to 20%. And I think especially the second party is important. That was something that was nerfed very early on, and now it's kind of back. So we will see if this puts it in a fair place, or if this makes it too strong maybe. But either way, we're probably going to see this in solo, especially since no Glad Shield, no Berserker Shield gives warriors less of an upper hand when it comes to sustain over guardians and mages in solo, meaning that they can kind of, you know, try to combat into them with these items now better, and we'll see how it goes. Mail of Renewal decreases time it takes to heal for takes to heal for 15% and regain 15% mana from 5 seconds to 3 seconds. So it just heals quicker. Yeah, nice. I'm still not a fan of Mana Renewal, to be honest. I get the idea, but it's just, with anti-heal, it's just so inconsistent when it's rewarding and when it's not. It just depends on luck. Stone of Gaia, on the other hand, is very consistent because, you can just back out of the fight. Healing per second increased from 0.3 to 0.5% of your max health. In my opinion, that is massive. That is over 10 seconds, that is 5% instead of 3%, which is a lot, over a bigger time span. Yeah, huge. I already thought that Son of Gaia was pretty good. I think it's fantastic now. Height of the Nemean Lion, passive completely removed. New passive, every 15 seconds this item generates a block stack for the owner, maximum 1 stack. Not a fan. I think the reflect mechanic was something that was in the game to punish life-stealing builds specifically. I think that punish is very lackluster now. Yes, you won't life-steal off that one blocked shot, but you only block 1 shot. Doesn't really matter against the late-game AA character of any sorts because they have a lot of attack speed. So, yeah, no. In 15 seconds doesn't, I don't know. It's interesting in combination with Upgrade Shell because you can block 3 shots, which could be quite significant against specific characters. For example, I don't know, I feel like Medusa's Viper Shot would lose out on a lot of damage, but overall I think I'm not a fan. Who this counters a little bit more than others, I suppose, is Heimdall, who has got a slightly slower attack speed anyways. Ring of Facade did not work. Bancroft's was too strong. And they don't want to nerf Bancroft, so it's getting changed. 2,500 gold, 80 power, 30% attack speed, 20% lifesteal, new passive. Each successful basic attack applies a hex to enemies and empowers you. Enemies receive a 5% decreased power per stack, and you receive 5% increased power and increased healing gained. Both effects stack up to 3 times and last 5 seconds. I think this is very interesting. I think especially that it increases healing as well, basically giving you your own secondary Asclepius effect, means there could be a lot of interesting experiments done with this. You could also combine this with a lifesteal build. You could do like Bancrofts, Typhons, and this item, and you still have a decent amount of attack speed as well from that, and then some other attack speed items. Yeah, I think this is very cool. So Sol, for example, would like this because she has a self-heal built in her one anyways. And yeah, Freya, I guess, too. So maybe we see something crazy. Maybe, maybe attack speed Shang-Kui is finally becoming a reality because he can heal more as well through this. Very interesting item. I like it. I like the idea, and we'll see if it works out. Divine Ruin, increased magical power from 80 to 90, decreased pen from 15 to 10. It was well about time. I don't need to talk about these in detail because I will talk about them anyways. I want to make a video about them anyways. Spear of Titillation, likewise, the decreased pen from 15 to 10. It's magical flat pen, but whatever. And Spear of the Magus becomes a new, interesting and attractive option for many characters. 2,450 gold. 110 magical power, which is pretty good at that price point, 10 flat pen, and a new passive. Any god you damage becomes marked and debuffed to take 7.5% increased damage from all sources for 10 seconds. This effect can only affect one god at a time and can only occur once every 10 seconds. So it refreshes on the same target if you use an ability again after 10 seconds. I think this is a lot stronger. I think this is a very interesting new iteration. I think this could become core on a lot of mages potentially because it kind of offsets the need for a lot of percentage pen because you just get some through extra damage increase. And it's not just from you, it's from all sources. So yeah, you just put that on a tank and have them CC someone. You just put that on a Sobek and you pluck someone and you see what happens. That's all I'm saying. I think this could be very, very strong. I'll see. Sometimes, this is something we have to see in game how it feels. It's on paper, but if it works, this could be very scary. Warrior Tabai now provides plus 100 mana. It makes a lot of sense because this is actually the ability-based one of the two boots. When we're looking at Ninja Tabi and Warrior Tabi, and it didn't make sense for it not to have mana, to be honest. So, yeah, both in lane and in jungle, I think this is good. Teleport Glyph. You can now teleport to Phoenixes. You couldn't do that before. Never tried because I just walked there. Cursed Ankh. When applied, this relic now reduces active shields by 50%. Very cool mechanic, I think, especially against Emoja when the whole team is shielded from the bouncing thing going around. So, yeah, I think this is cool. I think this is a nice bonus because Cursed Ankh is a bit underwhelming. And another relic that's a bit underrated, a little bit of a meme, as they say here, Sundering Spear. This relic now destroys shields when applied. Very interesting because this kind of, removes half of Odin's damage. I'm wondering what this does for Nemesis because I don't know if this is going to still reflect the shield that you take off at the same time or not. Either way, it's going to be interesting to see how this item gets used in some niche situations. Ratatoskr. Now, Ratatoskr gets a lot of changes to the first data mining version of the Acons. They do come with similar price tags, actually, but I think they've tweaked a lot of numbers surrounding that as well. I'm going to show you these here, and I'm going to briefly talk about them, but I think these basically warrant a second video once you can actually try them and not just read about them. So, Lively Acon, 700 gold, 10 physical power, 10% movement speed. When Ratatoskr damages a guard with an ability, heals for 3% of his maximum health. Very different from how it was before. It was for a flat value in combination with scaling of your power, and now it's just of your maximum health. And that builds into Evergreen Acon and Thick Bark Acon. Evergreen Acon, 1,900 gold, 35 physical power, 20% movement speed. So, around Boots level here actually, but a bit more expensive. But plus 15% maximum health. And when Ratatoskr damages an enemy guard, specifically his guard by the way, with an ability, he heals for 7% of his maximum health and mana. So this is probably the solo version. If you want to run Rat in solo and you build some health with this could actually be very interesting because this is maximum health increase. Thick Bark, 1,900 gold, 25 physical power, 20% movement speed, 15% extra protections. If Ratatoskr damages any guard with an ability, he heals for 3% of his maximum health. So not 7%, 3% this time, and no mana. That's what we already saw. And Flurry has an additional charge, and Ratatoskr gains protections that he shreds from enemy guards. I didn't exactly see how it happens on the patch notes because they only did it on multiple targets. I want to see what happens if you do it twice on one target, which I imagine would not shred twice, but maybe give you the protections twice. Either way, very interesting if you look into what some tank Ratatoskr build, because you get that extra 15% protections as well. So if you're building tanky, this could be a very interesting build and play style, I think. He's got a slow, he's got a single target stun, he's got a AoE knock up everything. It's just that you just got to engage from the air and let your team know, and you're very telegraphed in that. But it could be good. I don't think it's necessarily bad. And then we have the damage side of things, the Nettle Acorn. This used to have pen briefly on PTS. They removed that completely, I think. So 700 gold for Nettle Acorn, 15 physical to power, 10% movement speed. So 5 power more, but you don't get that healing. So the healing one is probably the better tier 2. But then the Bristle Bush Acorn is 2,000. Oh, they're actually more expensive. I did not realize. Okay, these two are at 2,050 gold, 45 physical power, 20% movement speed, 20% critical strike chance. That now deals 40% increased damage. That wasn't there before. And can crit. So basically 80% increased damage if you crit. When Dart damages an enemy, Ratatoskr gains 10% physical lifesteal and 10% basic attack damage for 6 seconds. Keep in mind that in combination with that, you have changes to the crit items, which could mean that you actually end up with very different damage output through Dart here. Unfortunately, they did not leave the part in where you can dash through enemies, so it stops on the enemy, and instead you get bonus stuff while stopping on the enemy. And the other option here is Thistlethorn Acorn. Oh, I love that one. Also 2,050 gold. 45 physical power again, 20% movement speed again. But this time, Acorn Blast now shoots 5 Acorns. Enemies hit by Acorn Blast are marked and take 5% increased damage from Ratatosk's ability, stacking up to 3 times for 5 seconds. So, this one's a bit weird because it shoots 5 Acorns and you can stun with any of them, so the stun is basically guaranteed. Like, you only need 3 for the stun still. But Acorn Blast also gets nerfed, so this is not actually as strong as it sounds. And at the moment I'm thinking that actually Thick Bark might be the call. It doesn't have the highest base stats, but just having Flurry twice and having the extra protections, even in a damage build, seems like stupid good to me. Anyways, Acorn Blast increased damage per Acorn from 40 to 100 to 50 to 130, so that's a lot higher. You get more benefit for hitting a single Acorn, basically. Increased physical power scaling from 30 to 40%. Enemies hit by multiple Acorns take 25% less damage on each Acorn, down to a minimum of 25% damage. So these damages should overall result in Ratatoskr dealing similar damage when hitting all 3 acorns. Also, you know, if you have more than 3 acorns, they still get stunned. But that means that if you get these extra shots from Thistle, Thorn, Acorn here, they actually don't do that much damage because they're down to 25% damage, and you know they get a little bit of increased damage here, but I don't know actually how that counteracts it. I have to test that more. And based on that, I am not entirely sure if this has so much value. It depends a lot on how the damage increase afterwards feels. I mean, obviously, mages get 7.5% for everyone on a single item, and Ratatoskr gets, well, up to 15% on his own. But that's not for anyone else. That's not for Ratatoskr's basic attacks, but exclusively for his other abilities. Meaning, it also requires you to primarily engage with the 3, because otherwise you already lose a bunch of damage that you would have here in other ways. And that also contradicts like using the 2 first for protection shred. So I'm a bit torn on this one. I think the more interesting options here are Bristle Bush and Thick Bark and Evergreen. Really, like all 3 have their redeeming qualities for different playstyles, and I'm torn on this one. We'll have to see. I'll have to test it out. I have to do a lot of number comparisons to really find out which one is better here and how. Our Wukong gets a buff, a Dragon Call, increased slow and range attack from 20 to 30%, and Wildstorm decreased cooldown from 9 to 7 seconds, bringing him back to his old form basically. And let's see if he can actually come back into the meta, especially with the changed items as well. It could be interesting when he like has his power steal with the basic attacks as well and everything. Apollo, Serenade increased physical protections from 10 to 30 to 15 to 35, so 5 flat. Adjusted Mesmerize duration from 1.1 to 2.3 seconds to 1.5 to 2.3 seconds, lasting longer on early ranks, preventing ganks better. And Across the Sky increased scaling from 30 to 40%, so a total of 160% scaling instead of 120% scaling now. Honestly, I'm okay with these changes. I really don't mind Apollo at the moment. I think he deserves some buffs. I think some other hunters should see some nerfs, but that's a different conversation. Artio is not being picked much, not been doing well. She gets cool buffs, and I really like that because I really like Artio. Energy Surge increased the Druid damage from 70 to 190 to 80 to 200, just 10 flat. Heal range increased from 55 to 65, so allies can't run out of ranges easily, which I think is a very important mechanic. Heavy Charge increased slow from 10 to 30% to 20 to 30%, so the early ranks do more slow. Otherwise, it often felt like underwhelming. It was more of an escape tool, so now it can be used better to engage as well and slow enemies down. Very cool changes. I like it. Baba Yaga gets another buff. I don't know, man. I don't think she needs buffs, but hey. Baba's Brew increased damage from 65 to 225 to 85 to 225, so significantly higher damage on the early ranks, even though you have multiple of them. I used to think that this is necessary on her early PTS stages, but since then she's got so many other buffs that I don't really think she needs this anymore. Well, guess she's gonna get through the mid-game a bit better, early mid-game. And Home Sweet Home increased the early ranks of the shield. It still goes, it goes up from 100 to 420 now. It used to go up from 100 to 420, and now it goes up from 160 to 440, so the real big impact is on the earlier ranks here, like 60 on the first rank. That is huge. Very good in my opinion. Bakasura Eat Minion increased physical power scaling on the self-heal from 70 to 85%. Increased protections from 10 to 30 to 10 to 42. I think this is fantastic. I think this is a great buff for Bakasura, who was in need of a buff for a long time. And while I used to complain about his minions dependency, since he can use that in his ultimate now to eat his own old minions, I think this is completely fine, and this is a useful buff for him. So I'm very happy with this. And I think it's much more useful to just use it for the protections now as well. Like, it's even more protection. You get so many protections just for jumping on your own minion and just keep fighting afterwards. Especially interesting for structure push as well. Whoops, bouncing too far here. With the increased pen on the items, and his build's probably changing somehow. Baron Samdi, Vivid Gaze increased damage from 80 to 90 on the first rank, and then 240 to 250, so 10 flat. And Wrap It Up increased scaling from 5% to 8%, 25% in total, to 40% in total. I think especially for early clear, this is interesting. I think Baron Zombie is going to be a very interesting solo laner with all the changes coming to solo. So I like all of this, and I think it's interesting that he's even getting buffs. Cabrakan Gets an extra tick of tremors right at the start. Just a tiny bit of extra initial damage. Nothing major, but feels good. Cerberus, Paralyzing Spit, decreased cooldown by 2 seconds, and Soul Explosion, decreased cooldown by 2 seconds. He had exceptionally long cooldowns, to be honest, so I think that's fair, and balances his main kit a little bit more. Chyron, a training exercise, increased damage from 80 to 300 to 100 to 300, just giving him a little bit more early on. And Masterful Shot increased the scaling from 70 to 80%, giving him a bit more late game, because Chyron has just not been doing well overall, so that's fair. And this could be interesting for Chyron mid, especially as well with training exercise being buffed quite significantly at the start of the game. Cthulhu can no longer use relics when it is ultimate. He gets some other stuff in the bonus balance that we can look at a little bit afterwards as well. It's not that long. Cupid gets the hard bomb. Minions take additional 50% damage from the explosion and the initial hit, so his clear is going to go up massively, which is going to be very, very interesting. You can also use that to detonate bombs easier on minions and to hit enemy guards with that. So I think this is a huge buff, and I expect to see Cupid now. Medusa gets a bunch of buffs. I don't even know, we'll see more. Viper Shot has 4 charges at all ranks now, you don't need to level that. Increased scaling from 10% to 12.5%. I don't actually know what that means, because it's per tick, I'm assuming, so... Could be a fair bit of extra scaling, but it's not going to be completely insane, I think, unless you hit like all shots on them or something. Acid Spray, increased scaling from 70 to 80%, increased range from 40 to 45. Nothing big. I thought it was going to be 55, and I was so happy, and then it was just 45. Oh well. Lacerate, increased root duration from 0.5 seconds to 1 second. Mulan. Overall, I think these are good changes that make her feel better, but I don't know how much they will change her all. We have to see that, especially with the new items. Changes everything for hunters, basically. Mulan, Grapple, increased training speed from 300 up to 1,500 damage done to 200 up to 1,200 damage done. I am not sure what the other thing in the bracket is for. Is that an old value? Oh no, that's okay, it's a total value, right. So 200, 700, and 1,900 damage with Grapple for the max rank. Increased protections from 15 to 35 to 20 to 40, so you get a little bit more for leveling that. And Divine Mastery, increased arrow scaling from 50 to 60%. Just some tiny tweaks here, and Grapple is going to feel a lot better through this, I think. Not so tiny tweaks are Neath changes, massive changes. Backflip, the animation travel time for this ability have been sped up by 25%. Understandable because her leap was insanely slow. Broken Weave, all enemies now see Neath base skin weave models, so that's more visual clarity for the enemies. I think it's fair though, same as with Artemis. But here, this is the big one. Unravel, decreased attack speed debuff from 30% to 18 to 30%, but this ability now steals attack speed from enemy guards only, decreasing their attack speed and buffing Neath by the same amount. So if you steal 30%, you get 30%. Adjust buff and debuff duration from 2 to 6 seconds to 4 seconds at all ranks. And hitting multiple enemy guards will debuff them all, but only apply 1 stack of the buff to Neath. This is massive because Neath... Whoa, what's going on with the green screen? Sorry, I'm going to fix that in between real quick. It's getting too bright. This is massive because Neath gets... and doing things and thinking at the same time, right? As good as it gets for now. Neath gets a lot of her damage from abilities and from building power-heavy, pen-heavy items. And now she gets part of the attack speed that she would need for boxing from the enemy. And that evens the level a lot. Like say the enemy is at 2.3 attack speed and she's at 1.7. She uses this ability and they're on equal footing in terms of attack speed. And then she still has massive power because she builds a lot of power. So for 4 seconds after Unravel, you really do not want to box Neath. And I think that's a long time. So I think this is a huge, huge Neath buff. And I think we will see her a lot more in Conquest even. Nemesis, Slice and Dice, increased damage from 40 to 160 to 50 to 170. Keep in mind that this damage is doubled when she hits at the center, which means this is actually 100 damage. And that's quite a lot for a early game ability that doesn't require you to dash around and stuff and is weaved into your basics very, very fluently. So a very strong change, but we'll see if it's enough for Nemesis. I think she might be in a good spot now. We'll see with the items as well. All around Overflowing Divinity. The initial damage is increased 40 to 100 to 60 to 120, but the damage per shot is reduced more. It's reduced by 30% instead of 20% now. So overall it should roughly even out. It's just more upfront damage so that if you get hit by the first shot, or like by a first shot, then you will take more damage from this, and I think that's pretty interesting. Set gets a tweak in terms of how he will be used, and I like that because I think this makes him more viable in jungle. Relentless gets the duration increase from 5 to 6 seconds. Yeah, it's nice quality of life there. But Skewer, increased damage from 70 to 250 to 85 to 285. Increased scaling from 80 to 90%. Especially early game clear is going to be a lot nicer for him this way. And that's something interesting. But Spawn of Set. Spawns now deal 60 to 80% of Skewer's damage, depending on the rank of the ability. So there is a reason to max the 2 now. Maybe max the 1 and then the 2 over the 1 and the 3. We'll see how that develops. But this definitely shifts how he is played and how he can be played, depending on what you level first. You will have a massive Skewer damage, or you'll have like more overall versatility. But yeah, I like this change a lot. Sun Wukong, Undefeated Body, increased percentage where his passive triggered from 40 to 50%. I think it used to be 30% once upon a time, so it's really all in all. Increased the duration of his passive self-buff if he heals above 50% from 10 to 12 seconds, so it lasts for quite a while afterwards. And then also, 72 transformations, increased Tiger Stun from 1 to 1.4 seconds to 1.4 seconds at all ranks, so consistently high stun, so you don't need to level this ability for the stun anymore specifically. If you want to level for damage, it's another thing, but you know, it makes his other damaging abilities more appealing. Also an interesting change. Sun Wukong is also a god that I could definitely imagine coming back with all these changes. He's not getting out-sustained that much, but at the same time he loses Glad Shield as well, so I don't know. I don't know how exactly it's going to go from yet. Sylvanas Wisps increased damage from 10 to 30 per tick to 14 up to 38. Yeah, a little bit more damage, no healing here. And at the same time, Wrath of Terror gets its damage increased from 60 to 100 to 60 to 120, and that's a lot of ticks, I think. So I think that's actually quite a fair bit of damage for Pen Sylvanas. Very interesting build, because sometimes you just die from Wrath of Terror, and that it does. And then we have Sloth, Hieroglyphic Assault. The damage. This is strange, right? Because it's not doing super well, but the damage increase will affect all enemies, not just guards, meaning that it's much easier to clear for him. Increase the scaling damage from 20 to 25%, but added damage fall of past 55 unit range, reducing the damage by 25%. So in late game artillery melee situations, he is going to do less damage most of the time. I don't know if that's enough. I feel like you might need some more buffs in return for him to work better. But I think this allows them to balance him better, which I think is fair. And maybe with the stacking item changes, they have to a look at him first and see how he is now in general. And last but not least, we have Ymir here. Increased duration for Frostbite from 4 to 6 seconds. Increase the damage reduction from 10 to 15%. Apparently, he was not doing well enough yet. The stats were not good enough yet. And so Ymir had something to say about that. Quiet designer, just buff Ymir. And then we also have our secondary update, and that's the bonus balance. Actually, we'll go over very briefly. With some extra skins, we've already seen those. Aphrodite gets another nerf, which surprised me. She's still apparently doing too well. And yeah, she's getting her cooldown of the ultimate changed from 90 to 70 to 90 at all ranks. A lot of Afro mains are probably very sad at this point. I'm sorry. I find this a bit of a rough one, but okay, fair enough. Cthulhu, multiple changes. Increased the cooldown from 100 seconds to 120 seconds on Descent into Madness. I think that's very fair. The ability was just up very often for how impactful it is. Removed the damage mitigation during intro, which was 80%, so this is entirely gone now. This is where you want to like hammer everything in his face. The moment he is starting to transform, you just throw everything at him before he hits you with anything, and then that's a lot more punishing. And Transfuse, ability 3 in the ultimate, reduced ally healing from 10 to 14% max to 8 to 12% max. I thought this here was very strong for a character that's not built around healing. This makes him a little bit weaker as a support, obviously, both of these parts, but I'm okay with that. I think it's definitely going to contribute to better balance for Cthulhu overall. They might look at his damage numbers again after this, but I think he's already on a much better track as it stands in terms of how you can balance him. And I think a lot of Cthulhu countering still comes down to people learning how to play against him. Heimdall, Yellowhorn, decreased knockback strength from 300 to from 350 to 300, so slightly less knockback. And the Bifrost increased the time from 0.5 to 0.8 seconds. Bifrost. This is huge because this actually means that it almost takes them a second to start teleporting at the lowest level of this teleport, whereas before it was off just a very quick out, and if you were good with this ability, you could just place it like consistently throughout a fight and just get at that little bit of distance that you need, and now that will take you a lot longer, and this will make a massive difference for how he feels, and that nerf is very appropriate in my opinion. Hell, Decay, and Restoration reduced the damage from 70 to 270 to 60 to 260, both for the healing and the damage. And, so both for the light and dark damage, sorry, and the healings afterwards, decreased the light healing scaling from 30 to 25%. So overall, a lot of reductions here, but honestly, Hell felt so strong. Like, I just played like one Hell game in between a few months ago, and she was so easy to play as someone who doesn't play mid lane much, and now she's doing well in competitive as well, so I can absolutely see why the nerfs are coming here. I think it's fair. Yamaganda decreased basic attack damage from 11.2 to 9.6, what a weird value. This is mainly because Warrior's Blessing used to counter his damage to some degree, and now it doesn't, so now he does a lot more damage to guards. It is interesting because this also hits minions a lot harder, but I think he was just overall very strong soul now, so I think this is fair. Some people called this out very early. I think I'm on the last patch notes when Warrior's Blessing was changed, like people were already calling this out, so yeah, good call. Nike gets some nerfs. Barrier Formation decreased the damage from 305 to 70 to 300 and decreased the damage to 310. Well, yeah, but you get it. Lower damage on earlier ranks, slightly higher damage on the last rank. So a shift here to make her early a bit weaker, which I think is fair. A little less bursty there. And Sentinel of Zeus decreased slow duration from 6 seconds to 4 seconds, and then scaling up to 6 seconds once you reach level 20. A lot more fair in early game in my opinion, so I think that is fine. They might have to tweak the numbers of the slow itself as well, but for now we'll definitely see impact of these changes already, and I think this could be good enough. We'll see. Sobek gets another nerf, but that's honestly super fair. I thought at first I was like, why? But then I like thinking about it. He's gonna have a really good time on solo now anyways. Lurking in the waters, decreased protection gain from 30% to 20%. I'm actually completely fine with that. And Demoger, Mending Waters, decreased the shield from 40 to 160 to 30 to 130. Decent amount of the shield here. And also Riptide decreased movement speed from 20 to 40 to 10 to 30. That's it for all the balance changes. I'm very happy with almost anything here, I think. Some are surprising to me, but the vast majority I think is very good. Ratatoskr rework is good, jungle changes are good. The Avatar Battle Pass is fantastic as well, so yeah, not many complaints with this patch. And that's all I have to say because I'm out of energy and out of breath. I've been talking about these changes for a solid 4 hours now. So with that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope to see you all for the next one soon. If you're new to the channel, feel free to sub button, maybe the bell, to me out. Duke Sloth, out.